one last time at 421.5 Veteran Avenue. A lot of you guys are clicking on this video going, what? Where's Mr. Beast, right? Where's Mr. Brightside? And to be honest with you, this was kind of a on-the-fly thing. I was like, listen, I got to get one last video recording out in LA while I'm here. And, I think he's hanging out with a girlfriend. So, it's just me rocking solo today, giving you guys the last piece of beat boot, piece of Frisbee content there is out there on the channel. Pretty much what inspired me to make today's video is the fact that tomorrow I am officially graduating from the University of California, Los Angeles. And, whenever you go through these type of milestones in life, right? What are the milestones? Like, graduating high school, graduating college, getting married, having a kid, right? These types of things that, who knows if that's in store for me down the line, right? You got to kind of reflect. You got to take some time to think about what happened, right? And I'm taking this time today to kind of revisit, smoke, specifically kind of give a memoriam to all the graduating seniors, and we'll call them graduating coaches, not fired coaches, in today's episode, and kind of show my appreciation and my kind of positive words to speak about them. And to be totally frank with you, I'm not operating at my maximum mental capacity right now. I'll let you guys figure out why. But it was needed to make this video, okay? So, yeah, pretty much, long story short, tomorrow I'm graduating. I'm feeling a little, teeny bit giant sequoia, right? Giga sad, that is. And I want to release this video. So, before I get started, there's so many really close friends I have in this program who are not graduating, right? And guys who I've had so many good times with past the last 4 years and really appreciate as people and as players. But this video is not your time to shine, right? You'll have your time in the light next year, right? But this video is dedicated to those who are not going to be with us after this year. So we're targeting in this video. We're targeting coaches. We're targeting smoke players. We're targeting smog players. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about games and good memories and whatnot. But anyway, let me get started. Let's talk about the coaches I've had in this program who aren't going to be here next year. And first off, let's start off with Jason, who caught me off guard when I heard he's not going to be coaching next year. Did not expect that news. He had, he did not have the decency to say bye to me, a player who he coached for one whopping season. But really, Jason is truly like the funniest coach I've ever had. And I'll always remember, he always said this thing to me. He's like, Frisbee is easy. Zone offense is easy. You guys are just bad, and stuff like that. And it was like, why is he saying that to me? Why is he saying that? But really, I think he instilled a lot of confidence in me and other guys who played O-line and smoke and smoke players in general. They're just like, go out there and play, And I remember guarding Jason and watching Jason play and be like, I kind of want to be like him. He told me this story. He's like, while I was at Northwestern, my coach, she wrote down every game how many turnovers I'm allowed to have. And she wrote down for me 0 to 1. And she wrote down for our star player, you're allowed to have 3 turnovers per game. And that was my role in the team. And he told me that specifically before regionals when I was a sophomore. And that always stuck with me. I was kind of like, I want to be like what Jason was for Northwestern. And he, it's very sad he's moving away. I think he did such a good job for Smoke in just being like a great coach and especially a great players coach. And he's gonna be greatly missed in the program. I'm actually gonna go ahead and turn this fan off because I'm realizing that usually messes with the audio. Coach Cook, if you're watching, you're not getting shouted out today, but I remember you complaining that I don't have a mic, and that should help things. So hopefully at the 4:45 mark, that will help things. But yeah, Jason, guy was really, really grateful to be coached by. Next up, let's talk about Brody. Let's talk about Brody, who's now returning after 5 great years in Smog. I think what a lot of people remember about myself and Brody, our connection, is, the infamous incident where I mixed him up for Cliff and potentially slapped him, right? But what I remember of Brody personally is a lot more than that. And I think, he has a lot of strong opinions about Frisbee. We know who Brody is. He has a lot of strong opinions in general, right? A lot of strong opinions about Frisbee and the way defense should be played, the way Frisbee should be played, right? But I think the thing I'll remember more about Brody beyond that is the wisdom he has about life, right? And he's a guy where when he speaks, you're like, that dude knows what he's talking about. We always talk about team-wide wise rankings, right? Brody's a wise dude. And he said a lot of things throughout the year, including that League of Legends speech he gave on the bleachers, that overall are going to stick with me forever. And I think he did an incredible job turning around how Smog plays defense in general. For people who have been guarded by me and for people who have played against me in practice or in tournaments, right, you'll know that defense has not always been my strong suit, but he was always emphasizing physicality and just grind, right? And that's something I take with me forever. So I think Brody, even though he's no longer returning next season, has really turned around Smog in the better. So we cover our coaches who are moving on. We're gonna go on to our players here in a moment, but y'all thought I forgot about Lish, and I did not. And earlier today, I was hanging out at my friend's apartment. My friend's name is Calvin Wicks, aka Houston, Texas. And we were going around the table. It was me and a couple other friends who played on Smog and on Smoke. And he was like, what was everyone's first impression of each other? And I kind of got to dinner late. I was busy packing for the big day of tomorrow. And Mr. Luke Davis, a.k.a. Capone, was like, what'd y'all all think about Ego? Because I feel like he's the most polarizing guy here. And the comment was like, I can tell you this now that the season's ended. And he was like, listen, I saw you come in as a freshman. I liked you. I thought you were not bad at Frisbee. And PaybaK told me oh yeah, Ashton, we had this guy named Ashton. He's not bad. And Combo was like, oh yeah, Ashton's not bad. He's played before. And Baylor was like, oh wait, never mind. He's butt. And a couple years pass, and I guess not much about my reputation changes. And PaybaK and Combo are both captains of Smog that year, and they're abroad. This is all going to go back to Lish. Just got to give me a second to get through the story. And he's like, basically, they were abroad, and they see the Smog roster drop. And your boy is on it, right? And they're like, what? How bad are we if this kid made the roster, right? And I think what that whole story tells me, right, is, for me, just straight up, these last 2 years have been a very special time in my life. 2 best years of my life, right? Getting to play for Smog Ultimate, amongst other things, and getting to spend so much time with people that I truly care so much about and love, right? And I think for me, I'm always going to have so much gratitude towards Lish being the head coach of the team. And, I told her this right after I made the team, but taking a chance on me, right, who had all of the negative media outlook in the books and giving me that shot to play for Smog. And I think, one thing that I'll never know, right, is the coach before her, Oren or whatever his name was, right? And I heard how bad things were. But even without having experienced that, it doesn't take a genius to know how much she turned this program around in the positive. And the other day, I was like, I don't post on Instagram, at least not on my main account. And I was scrolling through, and I was like, look, I got to get out a post before I graduate, right? Because, been consensus awesome 4 years. So I'm just looking through my camera roll, and in my camera roll, I find this post. I find the screenshot I have, and it's in my Slack. And it's of Lish telling me April 15th, 2025. She's like, Ego, like, I'm going to play you on O this weekend. Like, I want your goal to be no mistakes, no letting, no turns. Don't let yourself get poached off of. And I'm going to give you that shot in O. And I think for me, like, the whole season last year, I was kind of like, wow, like, I get no tick. I low-key suck. And I think, once again, like, I'm always going to have a level of gratitude for just, like, getting that shot and getting to play, like, important points on the biggest stage. And I think, I'm so appreciative of Lish for that. And I think what stands out about her is that she always cared so much for the team and cared about each individual player and was truly, like, an incredible coach in terms of player management and, like, showing interest. I remember every year she mandates people do one-on-one meetings, right? And, like, within those one-on-one meetings, it was clear that she had made some effort to understand every player in terms of, like, who they were both inside the sport and outside the sport. And I think, obviously Smog chose to go the different way, but over the last 5 years, Smog has become a real team in large part due to her. So that is some appreciation for the coaches that have coached me who are now moving on. Once again, I have so many great words to say about Remy and Bogo and Phantom and Hook, amongst others. But if you're still around Smog, right, which Phantom is not, but he's long gone, right? But for the other three I named, if you're still around Smog and Smoke, you'll get your other Beat Boo podcast guy to talk about you next year, right? So I don't got to talk about you. But anyway, going on to the players, I'm covering everybody I've played with who's graduated. So we got some Smoke guys in here. We got some Smog guys. I think we'll start with the Smoke guys, and there's no better place to start than with Smoke legend, Kaboom. And I think I'll be using the term Smoke legend a lot today because this graduating class was a strong one for them. But I remember when I was a freshman, I came in on Smoke, and I was like, yeah, like, I like playing Frisbee, but these guys low-key suck, and, like, I'm probably going to be one of the D1 toughest players on this team. And I remember seeing Boom play at K-Fall and being like, that dude is a lot better than me, and he's going to be the real deal. And, for a guy with a lot of A-plus takes, myself, that was up there for best of them, right? He embodies the term Smoke legend. Like, this guy was, honestly, across 4 years, one of the best players to ever play for Smoke, right? And I think for a guy like R2 Van Hook, he's going to be thanking himself that Boom had sports med, was never interested in playing Smog, because he truly great all-around player, incredible hooker, and on top of that, a really nice guy. So I'm happy I got to play with Boom for 2 years. And I kind of always wonder, like, if he ever wanted to play Smog, like, he could have done big things, and he did incredible things on Smoke too. But he was one of those guys where it's like, maybe even as good as he was, like, little untapped potential on if he dropped the sportsman and dropped being an academic genius. So shout out to Boom. Who do we want to talk about next? Let's go to my guy Drago. Similar situation to Boom. I played with him for 2 years, and first off, I was talking earlier today, and I was like, we talk about botted rankings on Smog a lot, and Smoke had their botted rankings last year, but, like, what are, like, the bottom rankings on Smoke? Like, who would be on the top, who would be on the bottom? And we'll leave the top anonymous, right? But the bottom was guys like Drago, right? Like, Drago is truly one of the least botted people I've ever met before. And beyond just being, like, a super fun guy to hang out with and see at parties, I think he's honestly, like, one of the most talented throwers of the disc I've ever seen. I think, I remember when I was a freshman, a big thing for me is I'm not an athletic guy, right? Doesn't take a genius to deduce that, see that. And I was kind of always like, I will only ever be salty about one of my teammates if they become a better thrower than me in less time playing. And I played like a half year in high school. And Drago was one of those dudes when I was a freshman, when I was a sophomore. I was like, that guy is just as good, if not better than me at throwing. And he has some raw inside throws and some raw around throws. And like a dude who I remember him telling me a story when I was a freshman. We were in the study and he was like, yeah, like I was 200 pounds less than a year ago. And the Frisbee pickup I wanted to go to in Orlando got shot up. So I could never go back there. So he's just like an overall really cool story among many of a guy who just like developed so much throughout the program. So shout out to Drago. Super happy I got to play with him. Overall, like another guy who up there with the smoke legends of the program. Let's talk about my guy Raw. Raw has been interesting because I don't think he's gonna watch this. He told me he's only ever hopping on the pod if I get on Apple Podcasts, which I will not be on. This video will only be exclusively on YouTube. So with that being said, leave a like if you're watching right now. We already know who Raw is, man. Nobody in history. I don't care if I wasn't here before 2022. Nobody has ever done more for the program than Jonas Holdaway. And as somebody who was once a Smoke captain, who this year was Smoke tournament coordinator, who spends a lot of time thinking about Frisbee and was editing film and whatnot, I oftentimes have felt like, wow, like I'm a little, I feel a little underappreciated, right? I'm doing a lot of work behind the scenes and nobody seems to care about that. But you want to say underappreciated in one word, say the word Raw. Because this guy, I remember I lurk on the Smoke and Smog email and I was reading like this tidbit about, it was like this form about officer interest form from last year. And Raw was like, yep, I've pretty much done everything across the last 4 years. So I would prefer not to do anything big, but whatever you need me to do, I'm going to do. And yeah, he's just done so much off the field. And I think we always focus on the off the field, but really on the field. Me and Keys talked about this in our realm a lot this year. You ever want to see how much better Ra's gone? Go play Redemption with him. Redemption's a game we all love to play. Fry your mark, break throws, whatnot. And this guy has truly is like one of the prettiest back-end rounds I've ever seen. And I think he's a guy who's given a lot to Frisbee, and it's shown in his development. Easily one of the most improved players in program history. I know my name, I think, gets tossed in there a decent amount, but really, like, Ra's one of those guys that needs to be talked about there. So I have to say, I'm happy that we have a chess.com correspondence constant match going because, whenever you graduate, you always got to think, like, how am I going to keep in touch with this guy? How am I going to keep in touch with that guy? I know that we're always going to have that going, It's like game pigeon. So, huge shout out to Raw. Let's move on to my guy Puma. And I'm going to refer to everyone as my guy here because, like, I'm graduating too. So I came into program with all these people. And naturally, you're just a little closer to people in your class. And Puma is one of those guys who, when he first came, he was a Smog practice player, and he didn't really play with Smoke much. And I didn't really know what to think of him, right? I think the only memory I have of him is that April 20th, 2023, he was like asking Samurai after practice. Samurai's my boy. He won't be in this video because he graduated last year, but Samurai's my boy. And he was like, hey, like, you trying to toke after practice? And I was like, this guy is a total goober. But I think something to really appreciate about Puma is, like, even you look at his banquet speech this year, and he's talking openly about how he was diagnosed with depression. And, like, something as a sports fan myself, I've always been, and just, like, men's mental health awareness, right? Like, it's cool to hear someone talk about that. And I remember I went home later that night, and I was like, wow, this is really the end. We just had our last banquet. And I had a long conversation with Theo Keys Conroy. And I was like, you hear Puma's speech, this guy is just so cool. Like, despite whatever he was dealing with, right? And I don't want to say whatever to diminish it, whatsoever. But what he was dealing with off the field, I just always remember as soon as I was a sophomore, like, and just getting to play with him actively and just enjoying so much playing with him, like, he was just such a positive guy. And just, like, always, one of the best vibes guys this program's ever seen. I remember I asked Remy, I was being chief instigator the other day, I asked Remy, who are the 4 biggest characters in your time on Smoke and on Smog? And Puma was one of those guys, because he's a character in a different way than I'm a character, right? He's a character in the way that he's just so positive and, like, truly, I think, like, an incredible role model for the freshmen that Smoke is bringing in. So, shout out to Puma. In regards to on the field, like, something I constantly told my friends on Smoke this year, I told this to Chip and Keys a lot, was that the one thing you know about a lefty, especially a raw lefty like Puma, cut wherever you want, the guy is going to get you the disc. And I played at a couple Smoke practices here, and it's literally just like, cut where you want, boop, high release, boop, around. Whatever it is, the guy is going to get you to rock. So, lot of love for Puma. To close it out with this Smoke graduating class, y'all didn't think I forget about Keys, right? Y'all didn't think I forget about Keys. One of the people I've had the privilege of playing 4 years next to. Now, is that 4 or is that 3.5 or is that 3? Remains to be seen, right? But I think for me, you know, I had the pleasure of living with this guy for a whole year, and I remember, like, I'm not a fan of the backhanded compliment. I know whenever we do the shout out circles at the end of tournaments, people are like, nah, that guy always is a backhanded compliment. But I have to do a backhanded compliment here. I came into the program, and I remember when I was a freshman, me being this kid with a big ego, I was like, you know, I don't care about people being better than me, but I care about other freshmen who are better than me. And I was already accepted that Boom was the guy, and people were talking about, oh, who else is really good? Who else is really good, right? And Keys was pulling up to our practice, and Keys was a starter on Smoke's O-line. And I've told him this, and I'm going to say it to the audience. I'm like, what? Like, this is just total unserious. Like, this guy does not look particularly fast. He doesn't really look like he can throw. Doesn't look like a supreme athlete or anything. Like, what? This dude is, like, on your O-line? I know it's, like, Smoke before there was a lot of positive development and kind of when it was a more casual experience. But I'm like, I mean, this is just an unserious team to have him on the O-line. And I was like, recently, Common texted in C-Team. He's like, I saw this guy, or no, it wasn't Common, but somebody texted in C-Team being like, I saw this guy wearing a Smoke jersey with Veld on it. And Veld is a guy named Luxo. And Luxo was like, kind of on Smoke for a little bit, was a little bit of a bot, like wasn't great at Frisbee with full due respect. And I always thought like Keys was just Luxo 2.0. And I said earlier I was giga right about Boom. Well, I was giga wrong about Mr. Keys, because I think, truth be told, I'm just going to say it. This guy is, peak for peak, the best player to ever put on a Smoke jersey. Now, once again, can't speak for pre-2022, but I watched the dang tape this year. I watched the tape, and this dude was dirty. This dude was GD, giga dirty. Just like such an all-around player. And I'm so happy I got to become close friends with this dude, because I was the guy who faded socials for much of my Smoke career, and this was a dude who faded socials for a lot of it too. And he was a guy who, like, I always thought was so mysterious, and I was like, I want to get to know that guy better. And I remember last year, like, us both being at tryouts and both being nervous about making the team, and him telling me, like, he's like, yeah, man, like, I don't know about both of us, but, like, here's the thing, like, if it comes down to, like, us and these other people, like, I think they'd be totally wrong if they took me over you, because I think you're better than me. And he said that to me, and I was like, so nice of him. given that we were both competing for like what we thought was the same roster spot. And he was totally wrong about what he said, but like, high character dude, best player to ever play for Smoke. I don't have more to say about TC. Okay. Are we moving to small guys? No, we got one more. And that's Mr. Henrik Zane, Chipotle. When I was a freshman, I was trying to find my friends in this community, in this UCLA community. When you go to college, you know, life advice for whatever high school students are out there watching this, which I assume the number is a big fat donut. Life advice, there's an adjustment period you go through. Here's some wisdom for you young kids out here. There's an adjustment period you go through. You go to college, maybe it's your first time being away from home, right? You're like, how do I make friends, right? How do I meet people? And I used to like to play poker a lot when I was a freshman. I've kind of gone off of the gambling end, the sports bet. You know, I'm not really into that stuff anymore, right? I'm an ethical hooper. And one of the people I met when I was a freshman was a guy named Gus, right? He was my suite mate, super cool guy. And I didn't do a lot with him, but one day he texted me and he's like, hey man, I heard you play poker a lot. Like, can I get in on one of your games? So I met him in one of the games, and this guy wearing this like Lakers hoodie shows up, and he's like Asian. Like, I'm like, who is this dude? He's like hitting a vape constantly. Looks like he's like a total goober, and he is like telling me he's an art major, and he's like, his name is Henrik. And I'm like, okay, this is just not a real person. Like, first of all, your name's not Henrik. Second of all, you're just like not a real person. And if you would have told me 3.5 years ago that person would have became one of my closest friends at the school, I would have told you, like, I have a better chance of winning the lottery tomorrow. But truth be told, right, you know, even that summer, I didn't even know Henrik that well, and this guy's just like constantly blowing up my phone. And this year, a common complaint I've talked about even on the podcast, right, is I get spam phone calls from this guy. Maybe I'll edit into the video, but basically, the other day I was curious. I was like, who do I call the most? And I type in Henrik into my contacts. 400 calls in the last 365 days. So I was like, I used to complain about this guy flooding me with calls, but ever since the season's ended, this guy has like called me maybe 1/5 as much, 20% as much, and I've kind of missed it. I've been like, I miss hearing the rants after practice, being like, dude, I'm such a terrorist. I'm so bad at Frisbee. But all I have to say, right? What's that long tangent to say is that when I was a sophomore and I was captain of Smoke, I recruited 3 or 4 of my friends to play Frisbee. And the only one who stuck with it was Chip. And I really do think it speaks a lot to his character that I think a pet peeve of mine, of my friends, is like the inability to commit to things, right? The inability to be like, I'm fully sold on just playing Frisbee. But he was a guy who was, one way or another, somehow became fully sold. And we have the jokes of him taking his cleats off at random tournaments. And we know who he is. He's skipped practice to, you know, jerk off. Like, we know who he is, right? But I think there's not a lot of guys out there who have made more of a cultural impact than him. And it's been so much fun just having him around and having a friend that I don't consider a Frisbee friend around to talk about Frisbee and about random things, right? And beyond that, I cannot believe it, but the guy turned out to be a pretty good player. And he's gotten well more layout Ds than I have in my Smoke career. He was a captain for a team that made D1 regionals. And for that, I am proud of my boy. So that recaps my Smoke graduates memoriam. And we're already a half hour into the vid, so we'll try to speed it up a little bit while still being authentic into the Smog graduates category. So where do we start with this? Man? So many guys that I came into the program with, spent 4 years with, right? Got to see grow as players and people. And I think we start off with the newly engaged Empire. I am someone who had the privilege of getting to meet Empire before he even thought about joining Smog. There was a day I played pickup with him, and immediately what stood out to me was you ever watch Will Selfridge's the beginning of his Callahan video? Speed. This guy's fast. And he could throw a flick before he even started playing. Or I guess he had thrown a little bit before he got to college, right? But he could throw. And I think earlier I said Ra was one of the guys who improved the most across all of college, right? Empire's up there. Empire's right up there. I mean, how do you go from someone who's never played Frisbee to being the leading goal scorer on the team the next year? That was before I was on Smog. And then this year, like, a little cursed with injuries, but one of the best players on the team before he gets hurt. Just such a good player and someone who, like, improved so much at throwing and amongst other things across the program. I think what I really like about Empire was all these car rides I had with him where he would just be, you know, I like to consider myself like a relatively unfiltered person, right? Someone who says what's on their mind and is not scared to just say things. Empire's got me beat in that category. That's something I'm willing to admit. And the amount of funny things he said randomly throughout the year, very high level. So shout out to Empire. Smog will miss you, I'm sure. We're gonna talk about his boy, Ozymandias. OZY. Oh. Something that you'll learn, whoever's watching this video, about being a bench warmer on a Frisbee team is bench warmers connect, right? And for me, as a bench warmer, like, my connection was Ozymandias. And it was so funny because we'd just go to tournaments and we'd be like, you know, we'd crack jokes and scattered benched was a thing, right? And we would like talk and we would just be out of pocket to each other and we talk about non-Frisbee and all that. And I think for me, right, what stands out about Ozymandias is just, like, once again, ball of energy personality, right? Like, one of the most likable guys I've ever met who just, like, manages to take insult in stride. I am a sensitive person, right? I do not take criticism easily. This guy, Ozymandias, has taken stray after stray across 2 years. You know, he's been labeled bust of the year. He's been labeled all these things, and he just takes it in stride, and he makes fun of himself, and he keeps it pushing, right? And some of what I'm saying might sound like an insult, but really, earlier today, I was playing games, once again, with Frisbee friends, and I like to do this, like, yeah, have you ever thing. For example, right, somebody walks past a, you know, speed limit sign, right, and they're like, hey, there's a speed limit sign. I'm like, yeah, when's the last time you got arrested for speeding? I love the, have you ever gone to court for having a speeding ticket, right? And somehow the topic came up, like, we were playing this game called Beer Ball, and I think Mr. Breastside made a good defensive play, and he was like, yeah, like, this is why I'm depoy, right? And I asked him a dumb question. I'm like, yeah, like, have you ever been, like, totally fazed by someone in practice on defense and you're like, that person should be depoy? And Gigi's like, nope. And Capone's like, nope. And I turn to Kama and I go, we both know the correct answer is OZY. Because that guy is truly an incredible defender and just incredible athlete, period. There's a reason LaCroix said he's the guy who's going to take us to nationals. And I think for me, last podcast, for those loyal viewers who are watching both this and that, will remember PaybaK was like, I really hope Capone keeps playing Frisbee because he could be really good. And I text OZY a little bit outside of the scopes of the pod. And, you know, he's been honest with me. He's like, I don't see the point anymore. Like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep putting my body through this. But if that kid who's 3 years older than me, right, keeps playing the game of Ultimate Disc, I think it will be a sight to see. So I will miss OZY, one of the premier enjoyable people to be around within the program. All right, I think we take a sharp turn here, and we talk about Mr. Nightwing. I think recently there was a conversation around the team and around the last podcast where there was a player on our team who I'm going to air out here because I'm graduating and I don't care about keeping secrets anymore. On the blog camping trip, my great friend LaCroix, who won't be mentioned in this video further, but my great friend Emmett LaCroix Brasowski said, "There's no player or person I respect more." Wait, he said there's no peer I've ever respected more than I respect PaybaK. And me and Capone obviously immediately start going, what a glazer. What a glazer. How can you ever... Oh, my bad, guys. Sorry. It's been a rough evening for your boy, but we're like, what a glazer, right? How can you ever say that about a peer of yours? But I think for me, I don't think there's ever been, someone that I have honestly seeked approval from as much as Nightwing. And in some ways, it's like a little bro, big bro thing, which is weird because it's Nightwing. It's Nightwing, right? But I think he's embodied so much of what Smog is about heart, about wanting it, about loving your teammates and loving the game. And he was one of those guys when I came in as a freshman. I'm like, how is it possible to be that good at Frisbee? How is he that tough? And a couple years later, I'm sitting here and I'm going, how is he so tough at Frisbee? In a large part because he's so athletic. And he's worse than me at basketball. He's a cone at basketball. How is that possible? Right? Sorry, Nightwing. I had to get one dig in you there. But I think for me, I'm so happy to get to call this guy a friend of mine. Right? And I think 5 years down the road, there's no one I'd rather kick back, have some beers, watch sports game with, and just listen to whatever he says. Because that is a peak Nightwing experience. Whew. Let's take a little water break before we move on. Okay, let's talk about my boy. Who do we want to go to next? Let's talk about PaybaK, because we just talked about him. We just talked about him with LaCroix, right? I think in the last 2 years, I am somebody who disagrees with people a lot. And there's nobody I've disagreed with more than PaybaK, right? Me and him argue a lot. He has on numerous occasions raged at me and said things like, I don't understand how you think I'm this stupid. I have no choice but to think you're super stupid, right? Me and him have an interesting dynamic, to say the least. And I think ultimately, there's still aspects of PaybaK I don't quite understand, right? The whole derive enjoyment, from things that normal people don't, right? But one thing about PaybaK is that I think he was one of the most fun people to talk to throughout my 2 years here, just to pick his brain, right? See what's going on in the inner mind of Zimmerman Adams. And he's also someone who, as much as I made fun of LaCroix for saying this, you can soundbite this, you can clip this, you're going to get me, right? He is truly, in terms of character and personal ability, he is one of the people in my life I've met who I have a great respect for just who he is and the way he carries himself. I think that he has captained Smog for 3 years. He's done a lot for the program. And he's, really carried himself in a way that is very commendable. And I think so many people respect him, myself included, for that reason. On top of the fact that he is a very good Frisbee player, as we all know, revolver if he didn't get injured. But just somebody who is really dang good at the game of Frisbee while being really dang good at motivating his teammates and being a great leader. I think what stands out is that he isn't going to be done, on the Frisbee field. I think he's actually probably done playing Frisbee. But he's going to do bigger things than the rest of us with presidential elections, and he'll probably work in the government someday too. So, another guy who I'm going to miss talking to about our differences in life philosophy and just general listening to, because he's one, you know how we call people like fake nice. I'm not saying PaybaK is fake nice, but he's one of those people who you get behind closed doors and he's a lot funnier than you think of him as. So, yeah. All right. We're closing it out here. Why not talk about, I think my guy's going to be home soon, so why not talk about Capone before he hears me talk about Capone? Earlier I said Keys was one of the guys I had the privilege of playing 4 years with. The only guy who I've really played 4 years with is Capone. And at first, he wasn't that bond to the program, didn't hang out with any of us outside of practice. But as time's gone on, we all agree by consensus, 4 years in, he has the most motion of any player in the Smog Smoke program. And that's a testament to his social chair abilities, but also the fact that he's probably, I said this about Drago earlier, but Capone is, once again, stamped the least botted person in Smog history. I'm just throwing history in there for no reason, right? But truly, once again, one of those likable guys, and somebody who there's something we need to appreciate about people in life, and that's reliability. And people who, by reliability, I mean people who are just always down to do things. And Capone is somebody who I don't think has really ever turned down just doing things, aka having fun, aka enjoying life and hanging out with friends and doing things, right? And something he's always told me, right, and is he's like, I'm not like the biggest grinder in the world. I'm not somebody who's actively seeking to like work insanely hard to improve at Frisbee. But if something's required, I'll always be there. And that is like the definition of who Capone is. On top of the fact that, on the field, he went from Smoke's D2 line to one of the best players on Smog, the consensus second best deep ball winner I've ever seen, the consensus third best beer ball player in the program. Just somebody who is so fun to be around. And I'm very happy that I have, a spot in Denver where I'll be able to see him a lot down the road. Okay, let's keep it going with the C's. Let's go on to my boy Clifford. Last year, Clifford, at Will Night, which I was not at because I left early, gave me his signature jersey and said, I'm giving this to you because you understand the meeting more than anyone else ever will. And me and him, we're boys. It's, I don't want to say things in a way that makes us sound like we're lovers or something, but we have a special bond for the fact that he is really the only player in the Frisbee program I've ever taken multiple classes with. I've had the privilege of signing his name on the attendance sheet when he wasn't there. I've gotten to experience studying on this very couch, honestly, with him on a night we're both screwed for an exam. But it's been a lot of fun being around Mr. CL in general. And I think what stands out to me about him is first of all, just like how funny he is. But on top of that, I really did not expect for him to be as defensively incredible as he became on Smog. I hear Capone and Trish coming in. Yo, what's up, dude?
What's up, dude?
I'm filming a solo Beat Boot podcast right now.
Oh. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm doing like I don't know if this is like corny or what, but I'm doing like a segment on every player who's graduating this year.
No.
So I had a feeling you were gonna come back in like the next like 10 minutes. So I just did you.
Okay.
So you're gonna have to like listen to that.
I'll be waiting for the episode to come out so I can check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. How was games?
Yeah, we did. It was fine. We didn't play a lot of games. Mostly just like kind of yapping, just talking to people.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Yes.
I'm glad we were able to go.
And you think you're gonna be able to recover by 6 a.m. tomorrow?
I mean, I hope so. Worst case, we can stop on the road for an energy drink, and then we'll be good to go.
Yeah.
But,
you know what they say, an energy drink a day keeps a DUI away. Yeah.
They do say that.
Yes, exactly. But yeah. In the spiel I said about Capone, the thing I forgot to mention was that I'll also be very happy to see his wonderful girlfriend Trish in Denver when I'm there. You know.
That's why you're my girl.
thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Where were we? Okay. When I edit that out, this will be the sign that I'm back in. CL. I am very happy that he started a fantasy football league, which fantasy football is a great way to keep connecting with people. Recently, I had a conversation with a friend. Actually, perfect interjection. My friend, Shire, who told me, he's like, it's just too hard to keep in contact with people through text. So I hope we keep in touch, but like, you know, fantasy football, one of those best ways to keep in touch. But yeah, oh man, Shire, man. When I first met Shire at UCLA, I heard tales of Look Below, right? I heard tales. You know, I saw the Dane World Junior Ultimate Championships, that catch he made against, I want to say France. You know, maybe it wasn't France, whatever. I saw how tough he was, right? And I was like, oh, like, it's always cool to see someone really good at Frisbee. But my problem with Shire was I would get dinner occasionally with him because the freshmen would hang out, and I was friends with someone I'll talk about later who was friends with Shire, and we get dinner. And every time we got done getting dinner, at least twice, when I say every time, I say at least twice, he was like, see you later, Ian. And he just like couldn't get my name right. And recently, this podcast, you saw here, we had PaybaK and Brightside. And Brightside was like the way I determine if people are nice or not is if they can remember like details about your life and remember your name and things like that. And I'm like, well, this little hobbit kid, little twerp, can't even remember my name. It's just like, he's just obviously not a nice guy, right? Well, little did I know I would be extremely wrong about that one. And I never got to know that until I was his teammate. Because really, you know, for Shire, straight up, the best Frisbee player I've ever got to play with on the same field as a teammate. When I go home and I play basketball, I play with my friends who are complete doo-doo. Doo-doo is hard, right? But my friends who are not amazing. And there's times when, like, I'm the best player on the court. And straight up, I am sometimes not a nice friend, not a nice guy to my teammates. I'm like, you gotta catch that, you suck. Oh, you gotta make that wide open layup, right? So Shire, oftentimes, probably feels that way in practice, right? He's the best at what he does on our team, Smog Ultimate. But despite that, he is one of the best teammates I've ever had. Truly, I've never seen him deflect blame. There's been times he's thrown to me and like I've just like gotten ran through or dropped it or something. It's like a hundo P my fault. One that stands out is the UBC game, which you can watch on Ultiworld. Recently, I've been playing games involving balls with friends. Pause. And once in a while, like I'll drop a ball. Like, for example, you'll play die, right? You'll drop the die, and Brightside and Croy will make fun of me, and they'll go, "I go against UBC. I go against UBC," right? So Shire throws me like a wide open under against UBC. You can go put it on Ultiworld, and I just like clank the catch, right? And I remember he comes up to me after a point, and he goes like, "You're totally good, man. Like, you don't know how much trust I have in you." And I think a lot of that message embodies like who he is as a teammate, despite being one of the best players in Smog history, right? Despite being like somebody who should really care in theory about like going to nationals because he is good enough to go to nationals. He's always had the character and frankly the kindness to kind of hold himself to the highest standard and prioritize being an incredible teammate instead of being an asshole like many great players are, right? And that really stands out to me about him. I think also beyond that, he's somebody who has a reputation for being extremely botted, yet is a very funny guy. He's a big time comedian, you know. So I am so happy I made Smog because this guy could stop calling me Ian, and I got to learn who this dude was, and really like not only the best player I've ever played with, but truly one of the best teammates I've ever had. So big, great guy, straight up. All right. We got a couple names left here. Hang with me. We'll finish this in under an hour. Mr. Calvin Wicks, Houston, Calvin, Texas. Today I hung out with Calvin, and he was asking, what was everyone's first impression of each other when they got here with the other people who are still in LA, the few that remain, sadly. And I tell him, or I got there late, so I think I told the story earlier in the pod, right? And he, everyone said that, and he asked us like what our first impressions were of everyone else, and I kind of gave him an answer, right? And I'm sorry, Calvin, if you're watching this, and I gave him like a slightly bogus answer, slightly. It was true, but I left out the fact that when I first met him, I was like, I like this guy, cool guy, seems like a really nice guy, but also seems like a guy who like, definitely has like a little bit of that ego, a little bit of that chip on that shoulder. Seems like a guy who like only really wants to hang out with you if you're also good at Frisbee, right? And once again, like my first impression of the other guys I talked about in this video, like Shire, like these other guys, like GW, Gigaron, because as I got to know Mr. Houston Common Texas better, like truly one of the like kindest, but also most fun, most like social butterfly, is that the term? Social butterfly people to be around. Like someone who brings people together and makes like introducing to new people and makes everyone like more fun to hang out with each other. I remember like, in this past year, I think I've texted him up there with most of people in the team about just everything. Because this guy, like, he's a reality TV fan like I am. He's a sports fan like I am. And just generally, like, I think of everyone on the team has some of the most passion for Frisbee and care for Frisbee. So many people care a lot about the team, and he's up there for people that care the most. And on top of that, easily the toughest player. Toughest as in TOUGH. Excuse me. This guy gets tackled in the end zone against Utah Northwest Challenge. Sprains his ankle. Next game, doesn't say a word to anybody. He's playing against UVic. 99 toughness rating in Madden. So, a lot of good things to say about about Mr. Wicks. I think, you know, the last thing I have to say is this year I had the privilege of, while we were rather injured, getting to start on the O-line in our first 2 tournaments of the year. And in one of them, at Santa Barbara Invite, I had 0 turnovers. And after the tournament, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I got to play every O-point throughout the weekend. Didn't turn over a disc once. Like, wasn't exactly, like, shooting and taking the most highest difficulty shots. But I'm like, that is a good place to start, right? And other people were praising me. They're like, man, like, you're the new Apollo. Like, this is awesome. And obviously, I'm not, right? But I remember thinking in my head afterward, I was like, when you have, like, an automatic safety valve that you can defer to consistently, like Mr. Wicks, right? It just makes your life a whole lot easier. Like, the amount of times I got bailed by this dude throughout the season was very high. And he always put a lot of trust in me, despite the fact that, like, this is my second year playing Smog. Once again, like, I'm not exactly the GOAT. But, like, he always put the trust in me to say, hey, like, with just us in the backfield, like, top 30 team in the country, like, I always know you're going to get open for me. So, really, like, great player who developed into being one of our team's best player, if not the best player. And also developed into being a great teammate and leader for us. So that's what I got to say about Calvin. And to close this out here, gotta talk about my guy, Renaissance. When I look back on my 4 years at college, a lot of my positive experiences came out of playing Smog, playing Smoke, playing UCLA Ultimate Frisbee. That's why the video is titled what it is. And something that doesn't get lost for me throughout the way is the fact that had Ian frankly not come to UCLA with me, or I didn't come with him, right, I would not be playing UCLA Frisbee. I enjoyed Frisbee in high school, and I thought, you know, I'll probably play in college, I'll probably give it a try. But I think the fact that, you know, I came here with a friend who was so hell-bent on playing Frisbee, and I would have dinner with him 4 times a week, and he'd always be pestering me to throw and be saying, like, you know, let's get better together, let's hit the track, right? Like, I want you to play Smog eventually and do things together, right? We would have dinner, and, you know, me and him, we went to high school, middle school, elementary school together. We have a lot of things we can talk about, right? And somehow, some way, right, you know, 20% of the time, we talk about what's going on in our lives, right? School, family, right? Religion, whatnot. 20% of the time, we would talk about girls, right? But the large majority of the time, the other 60% of the time, we would talk about Frisbee. And having that, right, you know, for better or worse, kind of turned me into who I was, right? Turned me into someone who cared about Frisbee so much and cared about Smoke so much. And I really have him to thank for that. And I think for me, like, as college has gone on, right, I've made new friends. He's made new friends, right? We don't have dinner 4 times a week anymore. In fact, this year I hardly saw him outside of practice, right? But he was still the first guest in the pod. And the friendship, right, is still always there. And it is always going to be there, right? So, a lot of appreciation for my guy there. And I think, you know, on the field, I was so happy he got the captain this year and push us to a higher heights. And really, like, in terms of guys on our team who have played club nationals, he's only one of 2 of them. And really, once again, one of those all-around players, like, no weaknesses in his game whatsoever. I am so excited to go to this guy's wedding next weekend. And really, a lot of appreciation for my boy. Because you don't expect the guy you meet at 5 years old to remain like one of your closest friends until you're 21, right? But for me, that's what happened. So sorry if that was a little bit too sad, emotional, whatever it may be, but that was a video I wanted to get out. Because this year they didn't, you know, I reached out to the club president and I was like, hey, can I talk at banquet? Can I give a speech? They didn't let me, so I had no choice but to drop an hour-long video. But really, to close this out, I just want to say, like, being part of this program, this special program, has been, the most positive experience of my life, right? It's something that other people have difficulty understanding, right? I have friends at home who don't play Frisbee or who know me, right? And they're like, oh, you're still playing Frisbee, right? You're still enjoying that, right? But nobody understands, right, the bond that you create here, the memories you create, right? The things you do on and off the field together as a team that stick with you forever. And for me, that's always going to be there. And I think for me, I am sad this is the end, right? But there's a lot, like, Smog is still going to exist, right? Next year, the team's going to be great, and I'm going to hear from my friends on the team, and I'm going to hear from all you guys, and, the legacy continues on, right, is what I'm trying to say. And this video is just me, I guess, showing appreciation for those who have put in work to the program and those who, you know how we say sands of time. Recently, my bad for ranting. Recently, the Knicks just won the championship, right? Jalen Brunson Finals MVP, the Knicks won the championship. And somebody was like, just like that, Carmelo Anthony is lost from the sands of time. Because the Nuggets won a championship, which is where he started his career in 2023. The Knicks just won a championship, right? This video is meant so that the Smog legends are not lost to the sands of time. So that does it for today's video. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment if you enjoyed. Reach out to me if you enjoyed, right? This is, unfortunately, the end. Tomorrow, I leave LA permanently, and I walk into adult life after graduating. So it's gonna be it for me and YouTube for a while, to be frank, right? And I'll be back sometime, and it's not the end, but it's a close of a chapter for sure. So once again, not to get too sentimental or anything like that, but I'm also appreciative of the last 4 years here, and really, if you're watching at this point, like, you're one of my people. So truly, thank you, and this is it for me. So thank you for watching, and this is Ego out for, I suppose, the last time.